I now call to order this August 7th Friendswood City Council regular meeting and announce that we have a quorum. Tonight's invocation will be led by City Manager Murad Kabiri. Please remain standing after the invocation and we'll say the pledges.
Would you please bow with me? Father God, we thank you for this opportunity to gather once again to do the work of this city. We pray you watch over the mayor and council and staff in this community as we take action on some very important items this evening. We pray you guide our thoughts and our words and that we uplift you in all that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thanks, Murad. Appreciate you doing that. I want to welcome the Boy Scouts that are here tonight. Thank you all for coming. Don't feel like you got to stay very long. It's just get that check in the block for your next badge. Right? Oh, my screen. My screen came on. Perfect. All right, we're up to item 4 already. Council comments and reports. I'll kick it off by just sharing with everybody that I had the opportunity to attend a firefighter badging ceremony, badge pinning ceremony last week. It was great event. We have 5 new pinned firefighters, and you know what struck me is that we have a volunteer fire department, and we still get volunteers. It's amazing that people are continuing to volunteer for us as firemen. I appreciate that. And I told Chief Kaz, that was the first firefighter badging ceremony I'd been invited to in 5 years as mayor. And he said, well, this is the first one we've had for a long time. So it's very cool to be a part of that. Lots going on, as usual. Who else? Councilmember Rocky.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention where the planning for the next library gala is going spectacularly. It's
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I wasn't on. It's going very, very well, and the gala is the last weekend of September, but tickets are now available. They went on sale, and they are actually going fast. So if you're interested in coming to the gala, you can go. You can check the library, and they have a link online to where the gala tickets are being sold.
Still taking sponsorships?
We are. We do have. You can be a sponsor, and if you're interested in doing that, come find me after the meeting.
Freeze and nickels. Sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to mention, if you drive around Friendswood lately, you've been seeing a lot of good work by the Galveston County Consolidated Drainage District. I don't know, you can run right over here off of Cowards Creek and see some inline detention and some stuff that they're doing right over there on the Cowards Creek watershed. And also the U.S. Corps of Engineers will be hosting their summer stakeholder partnership forum. Their theme is Nexus of Communities and Flood Risk Management. That's going to be at Moody Gardens on August the 23rd, and I'll be attending. And tomorrow we'll be having our Clear Creek Watershed Steering Committee. So we've got a lot of things going, and everybody's working hard trying to help out with drainage. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go next.
Just want to make everybody aware that on Labor Day, September the 4th, we are going to be having the annual free Labor Day ice cream social at the Perry home from 5 to 7. And everyone is invited to come and join us for some free ice cream. So we'd love to see you on. It has many sponsors in town, but some of the main sponsors are the Historical Society, the Friends of Downtown Friends Association, the Rotary, Keep Friendswood Beautiful, HEB, list goes on. Anyway, thank y'all. Hope you can come.
So I just want to tell everybody that I've been working out with a personal trainer for the last 2 years so that I could beat Councilman Rocky in an arm wrestle to try to get the library liaison position, and I finally won. And so, yeah, that's right. And no, but anyway, so I am amazed at what the library does. It's a very dynamic group of people. They are really, really busy. They had over 1,300 young people participate in a reading program this year. And something for the first time ever that's going to happen, they're having a high school student, the Gale Excel Adult High School Scholarship Program. Miss Megan Mays will be the first high school graduate from this program, and she's now eligible for a paying job at a daycare center that she's been working at as a volunteer. Yes. The library is going to hold a small graduation for Megan on August 12th to celebrate that. And I'm sure that this program will grow and more people will be participating in that need to finish their high school diplomas. They also have a bookmobile now, and so it's an outreach program for people who are shut in and unable to come to the library. But there are so many things going on at that library. I'm really happy to be the liaison and to learn all of those things. Thank you, Steve, for letting me win. And then also, I'm the liaison for Keep Friendswood Beautiful, and this past summer, they had a Keep Texas Beautiful conference in June, and one of our own, Kay Corey, was awarded Volunteer of the Year for Texas. So she is the face of Keep Texas Beautiful now. And our own KFB organization was recognized for their Gold Star affiliate status, which is the highest membership grant judge that an affiliate can achieve. And so also our own KFB coordinator, Kimberly Ramirez, one of our staff members, was recognized as a Keep Texas Beautiful mentor and a GCAA grant judge. So congratulations to that group. They are also a dynamic group of volunteers, and I appreciate everything that they do, both groups.
Thanks, Trish. Councilmember Matranga.
Yes, I just wanted to recognize a local animal rescue group, Three Little Pitties. I had the opportunity to work with them last week on loading 135 dogs onto their air-conditioned 18-wheeler, and they transport these animals that are already adopted. They're strays locally here. People have had to either abandon them or let them go. But the Three Little Pitties takes in these animals, gets them vetted, and then moves them up to the Pacific Northwest, where these dogs are already adopted and already have homes up there. So in the first 5 years of that organization's history, they have transported over 11,000 animals from this area to the Pacific Northwest. Just wanted to say what a great job they're doing, and enjoyed helping them out and volunteering with them last week.
Great. Okay, I don't have any public comment cards, so I'm going to skip public comment. We do have a work session. Item 6, receive and discuss an update regarding utility impact fees. Bill, you going to introduce our friends from Fries and Nichols?
Yes, sir. I wanted to introduce our presenter for tonight. His name is Kendall Ryan. He is with Fries and Nichols. He's going to go over the process that we're currently undergoing for an assessment of our utility impact fees. For some of you, this is a refresher, and for the rest of you, this is an opportunity to learn what impact fees are, what role they play in, and this will be a good opportunity to ask any questions that you might have in the process as we move forward. So I'll turn it over to him.
How often do we do this? Remind us.
So this is required to be done at no greater than a 5-year interval. So we're coming up on that 5-year mark. So this is where we're at right now.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Kendall.
Sir. All right. Leticia, I should have gotten with this before. Is this the magic wand? All right, look at that. Okay.
We're as excited as you
We're
are.
off to a good start. It's going to be a fun night. I promise we won't be too long. I did have the chance to speak with the SEAC a few weeks ago, the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is, you'll hear the term SEAC from me momentarily. And I asked them the same question, who all has been through an impact fee process before, just kind of by show of hands. Okay, good. So about half of you have, more than half. That's great. Also, I'd be remiss if I go further. I just wanted to introduce, I've got Eddie Haas with me as well from Fries and Nichols. I'm out of our Pearland office. Eddie's from our North Texas offices. I specialize in water, wastewater. He specializes in roadway. We just want to make sure we're have here to cover down on any questions the city might have for us tonight. So we're going to step through this quickly. I wanted to start off by talking about, just as a reminder, the city's existing impact fee ordinance. Friendswood has been running water and wastewater impact fees since the 90s. So this is not new. As Mayor Foreman just mentioned, there's a 5-year update on this. Just by way of a reminder, the city's current water and wastewater impact fees, if you look at the very top of this chart, they're about $1,400 for water and $2,800 for wastewater. So all put together, you're at $4,227. That's for a 1-inch meter, what we'll call a one service unit. That would be an important word as we go through here. And then as the water meter gets bigger and there's more impact on the system, the impact fee goes up. So that's kind of the basic concept. That's a one-time fee. It's a one-time fee when the building permit gets pulled. So what are impact fees? They're a one-time charge to really, asking the development to help pay for a portion of the costs related to the water and wastewater infrastructure that helps serve that development. They're systematic and structured, and really the concept behind impact fees, or the policy type question that cities have to answer in order to have an impact fee. Again, Friendswood answered this question in the 90s when you started impact fees, but just for background and context, is really who pays for the infrastructure to kind of help serve that growth. Friendswood is I would say you're a maturing city on your growth curve. You don't have an astronomical amount of growth in the future, but there is growth. There is continued development going on. And so as the impact fee program progresses, you're capturing that continued growth. With impact fees, new development has to share in a portion of that cost for the projects to serve the growth. Without impact fees, your existing ratepayers that have a water and sewer bill have to foot the entire cost of the projects through the rates. Impact fees, what's I'll say nice for cities about impact fees in Texas is that they are governed by Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code. So really this whole study, the only requirement is it has to be done by an engineer. That's why we're here doing this study. There's a formula to be followed. There's not a lot of room for creativity in developing an impact fee. 395 does lay out the process for developing them. We've talked about the 5-year update. We've talked a little bit about how they help the city recoup costs for some of the infrastructure that serves growth. And it really just alleviates so that the ratepayers don't have to pay the full burden through their rates. Just to put it in most basic terms, I know through budgeting every year, you're presented with the rate model and the potential increase in water and sewer rates. Impact fees are just a slug of money that comes in that helps offset how high those rate increases have to be to pay for the infrastructure. I jumped ahead of myself a moment ago and used the term CIAC, or Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. That is the city's planning and zoning commission, who will serve in the role of the CIAC as we go through this study. They've already been briefed again on their requirements, and you'll hear about that as we go forward. To clarify a couple of things, impact fees are here to pay for capacity-related infrastructure and the surveying, land acquisition, debt service, anything that's related to capacity-related. So what is not impact fee eligible is O&M, operations and maintenance, repairing broken things, debt service associated with non-CIP, non-impact fee CIP projects. So these are all state requirements about what is and what is not eligible for impact fees. All right, so this is where we are in the process. I mentioned we briefed the planning and zoning, or the CIAC, on this. Over the last few months, we've been working with your really great staff, talking about what does make sense for Friendswood in the next 10 years. What kind of development do we think are coming in? Where have the developers expressed interest? What kind of water demands do we think those would be? Things like that. And also working with the city's investment in recent water and wastewater infrastructure plans, so that we can roll those requirements or those recommended infrastructure projects into the impact fee, so that we're in alignment with your comprehensive planning, your land use, your capital improvement plans, and things of that nature. That's all kind of getting cobbled together inside of this impact fee project. Tonight is the council workshop. Again, this is what we're calling the 101. This is just informational. There's no decisions that have to be made tonight. Probably should have said that up front. You, as the council, will be asked to make the decision ultimately. You are the policy setting body on what the impact fee will be. We will be presenting you with a maximum allowable. That's really what 395 asked the study to do, is calculate the maximum allowable impact fee that can be charged. As the the policy setting body for the city, you will then decide if you want to go with that maximum allowable or somewhere below that. Actually, you can set it at 0 if you want to. It just, you got to make a decision somewhere between 0 and the maximum allowable. To kind of talk about the runway for the rest of the study, what's going to happen next is we're going to continue working with your staff and coming up with that number, pull all the projects together and do the calculations. We will then go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission in their role as the SEAC, get their buy-in. The legislature in 395 asked that they actually write a letter of recommendation to you that you have to get at least 5 days before the public hearing, so that you've had their input, and then again you will make the ultimate decision at a public hearing. Just to go over a couple bits of terminology here, again, there's no quizzes. You'll see all this again specific to Friendswood when we come back in a few months' time, but this is an example of an impact fee service area and future developments. This is from your neighbors up the road in Liberty County in the city of Dayton. Really it boils down to defining a service area. Friendswood, that's pretty simple. It's your city limits. You're kind of bounded by other cities, so there's not a lot of question about where to go outside the city limits. We'll talk about we'll catalog the existing population and commercial developments. We'll catalog the anticipated future growth, and then boil that down to service units. With your capital improvement plans, you might recognize this is the city, your sisters and the sister city in Pearland. These are their water and wastewater capital improvement plans that went into their water and wastewater impact fee that we just worked through them with a few months ago. So again, we'll have versions of these maps for Friendswood that show the water and wastewater projects. Again, only the growth related ones, not necessarily your whole CIP, just the ones that serve growth over the next 10 years. There's also no math tonight, so you don't have to do any calculations tonight. This is, again, just a review or a kind of an overview of what the impact fee calculation looks like. It comes down to cost divided by service unit growth. So just to go over the terminology, the ESU, or the equivalent service unit, that's that 1-inch meter concept that we talked about a minute ago. That's the impact that a single family home has on the average inside of Friendswood. And then everything else is scaled up from there. The eligible CIP cost. So when you build a pump station or a water line, you don't just build it to serve 10-year growth. You build it for the next 20, 30, 40 years. What this study does is it looks at the portion of that pipeline capacity or that pump station's capacity that will serve growth in 10 years, and it distills that portion of the cost. That goes into the numerator. That purple word rate credit, that's a very fancy way. That's the 395 language for saying you take the eligible CIP costs and you cut it in half, reduce it by 50%. And then the denominator is the service unit growth. And so again, that's the growth in service units that we think is going to come in the next 10 years based on the land use assumptions, working with your Planning and Zoning Commission and your comprehensive plan. And voila, you have an impact fee. Just one more note on this equivalent service unit, just to kind of illustrate it, get your mind around it. The city uses a specific water meter, and every different water meter has a safe operating capacity. And so this study will be using your own. Y'all use something called a Neptune Mach 10. It's not really important, but each water meter has an amount of water it can pass through it. So in your case, a 2-inch water meter is equal to something like 2.9 1-inch water meters. So the impact fee for a commercial developer that wants to put in a commercial, a 2-inch meter will be about 2.9 times what it would be for a single family house. Similarly with shopping centers and commercial properties. Okay, this is always an interesting chart that policy and decision makers like to look at. This is where Friendswood is now, kind of on the bottom right here of this current graph. We talked about that number, $4,227. That's your combined water wastewater impact fee right now. A lot of your sister cities, you can kind of see on the dates in the parentheses, that's when the impact fees were last updated. You just happen to be on the slightly trailing edge of a lot of when your surrounding cities are doing their updates. What's happened in almost every other case is the impact fees have gone up 50 to 75, sometimes 100%, mostly based on cost. The project costs have just gone up so dramatically. Did you have a question, sir?
I have a question. The Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code governs the utility impact fees. Now, the reason why those other municipalities are so much higher than we are is that calculation, right? I mean, does the 395 local government code cap what the utility fees can be, or is that a factor of how big the municipality is? Like Pearland, they're gonna get a different rate credit based on their land use than we would. So, I mean, showing this really just shows us at the lower end, showing us at the lower end of it, but in fact, that might not be the case because we're actually doing the calculation based on our land use. Does that make sense? I don't understand this plat when other municipalities are getting a completely different cap rate based on what the local government code does on chapter 395.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'll try to kind of unpack that as clearly as I can. There's actually two options in 395 for figuring out what that cap will be, what that max allowable will be. Friendswood has always, since inception of the water and wastewater impact fees in Friendswood, utilized what we call the 50% method. That's one option in 395. Another option is to do what they call a rate credit analysis, not the purple thing I showed you earlier, but and what that does is that looks at the water and sewer ratepayers' water bills, and it goes through all the math and all the debt service to figure out how much of the water bill is paying current debt on impact fee related projects, and everything else gets to be included in the impact fee. So instead of reducing it by 50%, in the case of, say, Fulshire, we ran those numbers and it was like 98% or something of the amount got to go into the
That
into
they
the
were
impact
allowed
fee,
to
that
go
they were
to
allowed
go
to
up
put
in the
into
impact fees.
Yeah, so there's a couple other nuances. Is it's not always just about the number of people and the cost of the project. Like in the case of Fulshire, they're a long, skinny city, and so to get from one side to the other, the projects are longer, they cost more money. So there's a lot that goes. It's not just a pure factor of people, cost of the infrastructure service. There's other things that go into it as well. So that's why the study has to be run for every single city.
Okay.
Just to elaborate, a lot of this is a function of the utility infrastructure you need to meet the growth demands in the next 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
And as Kendall had indicated, that we're fairly limited in our growth. So we don't have a lot of growth-related infrastructure cost associated with our impact fee. But the kicker in all this is we've always opted for the 50% rule. So whatever our calculations ended up being, we cut it in half.
Okay.
And that's why we're on the lower end.
What's the logic to cutting it in half? Is there any reason behind it?
I wasn't around when the legislation passed that, but my only guess is, the development community passed it as I can imagine the lobbying that went into the development of an impact fee. And what happens is, in order to run the other analysis, you have to have a lot of good records and bookkeeping information. And a lot of cities that we work with, just through turnover in their finance directors, or just it's so complicated to pull all the numbers together, it's just the easy out. And so that's one thing I can imagine that the development community might have wanted it from they know that the city still pays for 50% of the infrastructure. That's pure supposition. I don't know. Again, I wasn't there, but I think probably the real answer is that it takes so much work to compute the other way that the 50% method, it just ensures that they're not double dipping based on the rate. The city's not double dipping based on the water and sewer rates. And at the end of the day, it usually does result in, the developer getting helped out somewhat.
So, and you will bring us the maximum allowable rate, right? Okay. I'm sorry.
They'll bring us the calculation of what the maximum allowable rate is. Historically, though, councils in the past have not wanted to hinder development and growth. Right. So they've always opted for a rate much less than what we possibly could do, and that's why the 50% was adopted. The 4,200 was not what our maximum allowable. And back in 2018, it was, I think, 6,000 or thereabouts. Council still opted for a lesser number.
Got it.
Okay, great. Good question. All right, we're almost done actually. So just kind of a draft look at what the rest of the study looks like. Really the high points after today. The next thing that you would see on a council agenda is going to be a resolution here in the next month or two to just set a public hearing date. You're not making a decision at that point. It has to be a resolution to set it by state law, and the actual results of the impact fee have to go through a 30-day public advertising period. So there's just some time there. The actual public hearing, which at this point is tentatively scheduled to be in November, whenever that public hearing happens, that will be when you'll have the chance to look at the numbers, decide on the actual impact fee that you want to set coming out of this updated study.
And since we're on the topic of impact fees, I just want to put this out there. The state in this last legislative session made some changes to platting requirements as it pertains to roadway construction. Not for discussion or decision this evening, but if council's interested, we'll bring back an item in the future to discuss potentially a roadway impact fee for some of our regional major thoroughfares that wouldn't otherwise be dedicated or built as a component of development any longer. So,
Any other questions? Thanks, Kendall. Thanks, Eddie. Now you can head back up to the heat in Dallas. Warm here. All right, item 7, municipal budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. Receive and discuss presentation regarding the City of Friendswood proposed 2023-2024 municipal budget. Tina Hampton, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to apologize first of all for having my phone on my desk, on the podium, but I'm waiting for the AC repair people to call me. So I need to deploy the troops.
There are priorities and then there are
I need
priorities.
to deploy the troops if they come. I was like, another night without AC is going to be rough.
Ooh.
All right. So, good evening again. We're here to discuss the proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24. Councilmember Rocky had asked at our last council meeting to just give us like a summary of what changed from our council retreat and last month's council meeting till tonight. So just rough and dirty. The tax rate that we use to develop the budget is about 2.1 cents less than what we had projected originally. Merit funding is about 50,000 more than what we had originally told you. We'll go into more detail about that in the project, in the presentation. We have forces at work and decision packages now included in the proposed budget. Our water and sewer revenues and expenditures are a little bit different than what we had presented originally. So we'll give you more detail as we move through the presentation. If you have questions at any point during the presentation, just stop me and I'll try to provide an answer. The next, this slide actually shows the, if you can hit it 2 more times, once more. You've seen this before. These are our key budget drivers for this fiscal year as we develop the budget. We were looking at these items and things that we were going to need to try to incorporate into and address in the proposed budget. So we ask that you keep these factors in mind as we move through tonight's presentation. We want to try to maintain or enhance the customer service or our service levels for our citizens. Our overall proposed budget, this is all funds, not just our operational funds. We're at $118.2 million. The largest portion of this is our taxes and our revenues. It's our overall taxes, not just the maintenance and operations in the general fund, but also our tax debt service, as well as sales tax and franchise taxes. So that's about 34% of our revenues. The next largest portion of that is our uses of fund balance and retained earnings in several funds that we'll be utilizing to complete capital improvement projects. This is mainly grant funding from previous years, bonds that we've issued in previous years to complete those capital projects. Another 17% of the revenues are charges for services. This is our utility fees as well as our parks and recreation fees. We have about 12% in intergovernmental revenues. These are our grant funds that come from the federal government or state, our interlocal agreements, the funds that we anticipate getting from our interlocal agreements. Those are with our school districts for public service officers or school zones and our SROs. Also, the remaining 6% is derived from several of our revenue sources, fines and fees with our municipal court, as well as building permits. Our interest earnings are in there. We have our internal lease agreements for our vehicle replacements are considered revenue in the proposed budget, and also administrative fees. We have some miscellaneous revenues that come in. Those are things like our cell phone towers, our donations to various functions of the city, as well as some administrative fees from our garbage company for the billing that we do on their behalf. Next are total expenditures. We always present you a balanced budget, so our expenditures are 118.2 million as well. Most or almost half of this amount is for capital improvements. As I mentioned, those are capital projects that are bond related, either general obligation bond related or revenue bond related capital improvements. Some of them are in our not a whole lot are in our general fund, but we do have some capital improvements in some of our other funds as well that are a smaller scale. Public safety is about 16% of our overall expenditures. Public works is about 10%. Our debt service obligations, not just general obligation bonds, but those revenue bonds that we've issued for capital improvements, make up about 10% of the expenditures. General government is about 7%, and there are several components of the general government expenditure categories: city manager's office, city secretary's office, administrative services office, information technology, human resources are all part of general government, as well as the city's overall insurance premiums for liability insurance, windstorm. Those things are considered in that general government category. Parks and recreation and facilities is about 5% of the expenditures for the budget, and then the remaining 3% are community development, engineering, the library, and vehicle replacements. We'll narrow our focus a little bit to the general fund. This is the city's main operating fund for the next few slides. Just like with the overall budget, we balance our general fund budget. So our total revenues for the general fund are 37.2 million. And this is up about 2.4 million from the adopted budget this year. Overall, about 83% of that, of our overall general fund revenues are tax related. These are property taxes, as well as sales tax and franchise taxes, keeping in mind that the half-cent sales tax for street improvements and Friendswood Downtown Economic Development they're recorded in separate funds from the general fund. So this is just general fund revenue. The remaining 17% that's non-tax revenues are for various things such as interfund transfers from other funds into the general fund for administrative costs of doing business to support those other functions of the city. Fines that are generated through our municipal court for misdemeanor violations, intergovernmental revenues, as mentioned before, building permits are included in the general fund revenues, parks and recreation, service fees, charges for services, and interest earnings. Here is where we also record the cell phone tower rental and some donations. Another look, different view of the general fund revenues. This shows the $37.2 million and just the increases or decreases over the current year's adopted budget. So we'll stop there and pause there. What you will notice is that we have a zero use of fund balance budgeted in the general fund, and that's because we normally in years past we've had $500,000 budgeted for our budgeted use of fund balance for street improvements, and we have looked at it historically. The 3/8 cent sales tax for street improvements is adequate to cover what we see for the foreseeable future on street improvements. So we have not included that $500,000 use. We've reallocated it for some of the other decision packages that were presented at previous meetings.
Just want to clarify, those are on the
Yes.
same page I'm on. These are not reoccurring expenses.
Correct.
Sorry, Katie's gonna get mad at me now. These are for one time.
One time.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
ma'am.
Correct.
Yes.
And this was the direction council gave us last time.
Right,
at
I
the
think
last
it's
meeting.
excellent, thank you.
We'll take a little bit of a look at that tax rate that we talked about, that we used to propose, or used in developing our proposed budget. That rate would be 50.84 cents rounded. This is about 4.5 cents above the estimated no new revenue rate. And I say estimated because at this point we've got properties that are still in protest. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And so the Galveston County Tax Office did certify that estimated no new revenue rate at about 46.31 cents. So again, the rate that we use to develop the budget is about 4.5 cents above that, but it is only about a little over 2 cents more than our current tax rate. The rate that we used for the budget is, though, about 9 cents less than the voter approval rate, which is a rate that would trigger a rollback election for the taxes. The estimated net taxable value is it's over $5 billion now for the city. This is up about $129 million over our current tax year. New construction of about $107 million is included in our projection for the tax rate and in our budget development. We also incorporated or included and looked at exemptions that are totaling over $2 million now, and the over 65 freeze ceilings make up about $1 billion in value. So we have to try to estimate how much of that freeze ceiling value that we incorporate into our tax rate. Also wanted to mention that our values were certified. We received certified estimates from Harris County and the certified values from Galveston County July 25th. And at that time, about $191 million in value was under protest. So we are still waiting for appraisal review board decisions on those properties. We do incorporate about 80% of that value we anticipate hitting the tax rolls. So once those decisions are made, we anticipate about 80% of that will become certified in part of our rolls. So that's included in our estimates. The rate that we use to develop the budget would cover our debt service obligation on our general obligation bonds of about $6.1 million. This is less than what we anticipated it would be at the time that those bonds were voted on and approved by the voters in 2019, but our debt service overall has grown by about $2.9 million in the past 4 years since those bonds were.
Katina, we've now issued all of the bond money that was approved by the voters, right?
We have now.
So we got that in before the rates got any higher. I think that's great. That was excellent timing.
I'm sorry. 4 cents on with the $30 million. No, it's just going from yes, 4.5 cents, because it would be the difference between the no new revenue rate.
Yeah. The bond increase specifically was about a $1.6 million increase, a little over three pennies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. This slide captures the historical tax rate data in relation to successful general obligation bond elections and the subsequent debt that's been issued since that time. As you'll see in the slide, of the 14 years that are shown here, in 8 of those years, the city adopted what's now called the no new revenue rate. Prior to that, it was the effective tax rate. The years when we adopted a tax rate that was higher than the no new revenue rate or the effective tax rate at that time was in years where we issued the debt that was approved by the voters. So you'll see that there. Our next slide is intended to show the inverse relationship between the city's property tax rate and the property tax revenue that those rates generate each year. So, and this is over the past 12 years. So in 2011, the city adopted a tax rate just under 58 cents, and our levy at that time was just under $14 million. As values have increased, our tax rate we've been able to lower the tax rate. So in 23, the tax rate that we use to develop the budget is almost 7 cents less than 14 years ago, and it's expected to generate about $25.5 million in levy, and that's general fund and the debt service fund. As I said, the city's been able to lower our tax rate in that way because the values have increased over that time period. We were at $2.4 billion in 2011, and we're now over $5 billion in value.
That growth in value is also inclusive of new construction over that same 14-year period. So it's not just values on single properties that have gone up that much.
Thank you. As I mentioned, we present a balanced budget, so our expenditures in the general fund are also $37.2 million. This chart shows that $37.2 million broken down by city function or city department. So we'll let that sit for a little bit. Any questions on it? If not, the next one is the slide. The left side of this slide is something that we did show to you during the council retreat as well as last month's council meeting, I think. But we have updated the slide to reflect the personnel costs that are included in the proposed budget, the merit being $758,000 roughly overall. 670 of that is general fund, and those are employees that are paid where their salaries are paid through the general fund, and then about 88,000 on the water sewer side. So those are mainly our public works and those employees that support the utility infrastructure of the city. This includes the wages related to that merit increase and the taxes and the related benefits that are salary associated. We showed you on the second half of that slide is the impact of the merit increase. It's about 2.75 is our merit pool. And just looking at a few of our salaries or a few of our employees and what that 2.75% looks like compared to the cost of living increase that we're all experiencing. So we appreciate council's consideration of the employee merit and showing value and appreciation to the city's most valuable resource. The right side of the slide is intended to show and share information, providing a comparative look at what Friendswood's proposed rate is, our proposed merit increase compared to our immediate neighboring cities.
Sure.
So,
Councilmember Hanks.
thank you. So I noticed that there's quite a bit of difference in the percentage increases with our neighboring cities. I don't know what the salaries are, so I'm not sure, but are we having difficulty recruiting police officers, EMS, staff members because of that? Or are the salaries competitive or a little bit higher, so the 2 points, the merit increases are okay?
So we look at this on an annual basis, and if we are considerably out of not able to compete with neighboring cities, then we make adjustments to the ranges associated with it. And with those adjustments to ranges, there will be spot adjustments to individual salaries if they've now moved up, if they're at the bottom of the category and it's now moved up. Currently, we are not that far off from what our neighboring cities are doing. Unfortunately, they're able to offer more simply because of their factors associated, just like we talked about utility impact fees. The circumstances pertaining to one city may be different as it pertains to other cities. Historically, a lot of these cities forewent merits on an annual basis. For instance, I know Pearland hasn't had a raise for a lot of its employees for nearly 4 years, and so that's why this year they're proposing a COLA as well as a merit pool to try to play some catch up. I and my predecessor did what as well, intentionally do salary surveys annually so that we're not doing forklift updates at any given time. I don't want to be in a position where we're coming to council and saying, hey, we need $2 million worth of additional salary, because at that point we've put ourselves into a corner and we've already lost employees.
Thank you.
Well, let me follow up on that, Murad. At a 2.75% versus 4, 5, 7, do you think that puts City of Friendswood at a higher risk of losing people to those cities? Or does the salaries compensate for that?
And everybody's circumstance always is unique. Some people, we have lost employees to other cities based upon their circumstances specific to their family. I think this keeps us competitive. Now, I have asked Katina and Haley, Katina, our Administrative Services Director, and Haley, our HR Director, to look at possibilities of maybe capping the executive staff's merit pool and to provide additional funding for our non-executive staff. So they're currently evaluating that to be even more competitive.
So this would be the blended rate here.
Correct.
You might make tiers. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Our next slide Lists our forces at work that are included in the proposed budget in the general fund. I won't go through and read all of these individually, but they total 1.4 million. This list can also be found in the proposed budget document on page 378. Our next.
Sorry, just for make sure I've got it and everybody here understands it. This forces at work are just escalation, this cost of doing business not within our control. These are just payments that have escalated.
Exactly. That's
Correct.
That's our definition of our forces at work. These are things that are out of our control to some extent, to every extent. They're out of our control for the most
You
part.
bid it, and here's what the numbers are coming out like.
Exactly.
Correct. And the
windstorm, insurance,
Yeah.
those types of.
And just logistically, we're bringing the EMS into our fire marshal's department. The fire department's going to stay the same, but we're bringing the EMS into what employee department?
So this is a multi-year transition. This year, we're bringing on an EMS chief, and I'm going to make an announcement
Right, I
later
saw
on this
that.
evening. They will be in the fire marshal's department
okay.
because the fire marshal currently administers those contracts for service. Now, we may do some renaming of different positions.
Well, I saw the fire marshal's budget went way up, and I figured that's where we were going with it.
Correct.
All right. Our next slide lists the decision packages that are funded in the budget. These are items that the departments submitted as needs for the city and as funding was available. These have been included in the general fund's budget. Some of them have an outside funding source, either by fees that are going to be increased to offset that those expenses, or contractual obligations with interlocal government agencies. The IT support specialist, that last one, the outside funding source would be an inter-fund transfer from the water sewer fund, because that position would be supporting the utility side of the city. This list can also be found on page 378 of the proposed budget document, and they total about $1 million.
The crossing guards, that's our share, or what do we have 35,000 in that?
So the school districts will pay, FISD will pay their 3 crossing guards that they've requested in totality. CCISD will pay half the cost of 5 crossing guards in exchange for property they're donating to the city of Friendswood to accommodate the extension of Blackhawk Boulevard and some drainage projects along Clear Creek.
Okay.
The next slide is our list of unfunded decision packages. These are needs that were identified by city departments, but were not funded with the resources that we had available to us. We can provide tax rate equivalent information for each of these if you would like that information. We have that available. The total of this list would be about 6.3 cents on the tax rate if we were to add all of these items. This list can be found on page 380 of the proposed budget document.
Katina, is this in any sort of order, particular order?
These, if I'm not mistaken, and staff correct me if I'm wrong, I believe these are in our ranking, like our department.
These are the
departmental
A's, the
ranking.
B's,
I'm
and
looking
the
at
C's
it.
sort of thing.
Correct.
As I look at it, I believe they're
And
ranked.
the top one, we're currently working on a funding solution for that right now, and that may get bumped up to the funded list here. But those traps haven't been finalized yet.
Thank you.
This next slide, because we always want to look at our fund balance and the general fund balance operating reserve, that 90-day reserve that is recommended by our financial policies. This slide is a little bit busy, so I'll try to walk us through it. It shows the change in our 90-day operating reserve if we were to fund our operational expenses in the out years. It gives a historical look, but it looks forward to 2028 as well. And so the blue bars on the chart are the revenues that we anticipate we will be able to garner using the no new revenue rate, because in the out years, that's how we look at that until we know differently on a tax rate. The red bar is our expenditures in those out years that we are projecting. The green trend line that goes across the screen is our 90-day operating reserve that's recommended. That's our 90-day operating reserve. If we were to fund only forces at work that have been identified by the departments in those out years, that would be what our 90-day operating reserve would look like. That's the light blue line. So if we were to fund our regular operations and only forces at work, that's the blue trend line. And then the purple trend line is operational expenses, forces at work, and decision packages that have been identified by the departments in those out years of our multi-year financial plan.
Two things to note on this slide. Obviously, as Katina mentioned earlier, we're going to present a balanced budget every
Yes.
year. So whether or not our expenditures outpace our revenues, we will make some adjustments so that expenditures don't outpace revenue. The other thing to note is we don't know what future growth we're going to see. So obviously values change from year to year, exemptions change from year to year, but we do anticipate new developments and new construction that may change the outlook picture, and at least in the next 2 to 3 year window. So this is forecasting, but obviously until you get additional data, it's a guesstimate at best.
Our next few slides are going to shift our focus to the water sewer fund for a little bit. That's our operational side of the city for our utility operations. We have, in the proposed budget, there's about $20 million in revenue. About 96% of that is our water and sewer utility fees. These are the charges that our customers pay for the use of their water and sewer. And then the other 4% is administrative fees that are also related to utility billing. These are for late or non-payment fees, or late or non-payment assessments, and then some interest earnings, sales of water meters. These could be disconnection, reconnection, service related expenses or fees. Sorry. Another look at the water sewer revenues, showing the difference between our adopted budget and what is in our proposed budget. The revenues for water and sewer fees, it is reflecting on this screen as more than our adopted budget, but this is where we're trending to end the year. So that's what we based our estimates for next year on. Our water sewer is on our current year trends. Looking at the revenues that we're seeing from the meter change out, trying to incorporate that as best we can. It's to some extent, there's some fluctuation because residents are able to increase their water usage, decrease their water usage when they see their water bills. So it's kind of tough to gauge utility revenues, but we do the absolute best that we can. And keeping in mind that where we may see revenues outpacing expenditures, just keep in mind that revenue goes into our retained earnings if that is how we end the year, and then we're able to fund capital projects that are related to the utilities and not have to always go out for revenue bonds. And we will be planning to do a utility rate study like we're doing with the impact fee study within the next few months to determine that if our utility rates are sufficient to meet those obligations of the
Does your
utility
current budget
infrastructure.
forecast for next cycle include any material rate increases at this point?
At this point, no. So as we go through the utility rate study, we will take that into consideration so that if we need to make those changes in the coming year, we can do that. But rates are set by city ordinance, so it would be council's decision on how to proceed with the information that comes from the utility rate study.
But I do have a question now that we have our new water meters that are much more accurate. Are we seeing any change in usage, or is it too soon to tell?
It's still a little soon to tell. This is our first summer going through. Part of the year last year we went through the summer because we started the project in February of last year. So we don't have data that I can say for sure is related to the new meters.
We are seeing a benefit from the consumer side. Obviously, you have a little more control over the usage. A good example I'll use is Councilmember Griffon for the Masonic Lodge. Y'all had a leak, but you were able to identify it within a day or two as opposed to waiting a 60-day cycle. So they lost about even 3,000 gallons, about $9 worth of water, as opposed to waiting 60 days and losing several $100s worth of water.
That's very good.
And on the expenditure side of the water sewer fund, it's about 19 million, and the pie chart shows the breakdown by city department that's related to those expenditures or incorporate or encompass those expenditures. Again, our water sewer bond funds, like our revenue bond related projects, are recorded in bond construction funds, so they are not reflected in our water sewer operating fund. So we record those separately. The next slide shows our forces at work that are included in the proposed budget on the water sewer side. This list totals about 1.3 million, and it can be found on page 379 of our proposed budget document. The decision packages for the water sewer fund are listed here. Do want to make note of a typo on that fourth one down. It has a duplicate of the meter data collectors. That fourth one down is actually a meter tech that we are looking to bring on board to help with the maintenance of those meters. That protects the warranty of our new meters that we're installing. If we can maintain those, if something goes wrong with that, we can send someone out to check it out, see if there's an issue with it that's a warranty related issue. So this was something that we were told of when we implemented the program, was that the meter reading contract would go away, but there would more than likely be a need for someone specifically to maintain and help to work on the maintaining that meters to meet the contract and the warranty
But we're
obligation.
talking one person versus how many we had going out checking manually.
Oh my gosh.
It was a whole team of
That whole team.
yes.
Yes. It was outsourced, and I don't even know. I think the last time I had a count, it was probably about 10
Yes.
that would come out to read.
And this individual can also work on other things beyond just the meters. So when we have, for instance, this last week, there was a day in which we had 7 water line breaks in a single day. So our crews were working around the clock. This individual can help out those crews to help address those issues.
And we had no unfunded decision packages that were submitted, so everything on the water sewer side we were able to support with the rates there. This list can be found on page 379 of your budget document as well. The last slide is our path to budget and tax rate adoption. So if council chooses, we will have we've delivered the proposed budget document. This is our first budget work session. If council chooses to have more, just let us know. We're always available for sessions and dialogue on how to get our proposed budget adopted. We are looking to have a public hearing. It's on the agenda for tonight to set a public hearing date for the proposed budget. That would be at a special meeting on August 28th. Budget adoption could occur on the night of that meeting, August 28th, or you could wait until September 11th and approve it on the same night as the tax rate. We anticipate having a public hearing, it being necessary to have a public hearing on the tax rate if the rate that was used to develop the proposed budget is the rate that council chooses to propose. We would need to have a public hearing on that to give the public an opportunity to come and give comments on the rate and the budget document, and then we would be adopting our tax rate on September 11th. So as always, we appreciate council's guidance. The budget is one of the most collaborative things that we do in the city. It touches every single department. And so my staff, I thank y'all for the hard work that you've done on the budget. Thank the departments that have contributed to the information, and council's input is invaluable to us. So thank y'all so much.
Well, thanks, Katina. I want to be the first to say you and your team has always done a marvelous job. I see Rhonda, Andre, Stephen all here. Am I missing anybody hiding in the back? Well, fantastic job. We really appreciate you taking such a conservative approach to this whole process because, with that, we get good news at the end, not worse news. And, when you came with 4.2 cents, there was a lot of hand wringing up here, I know. And, we hate to go there if we don't have to, but when the numbers actually come in and gel, you're able to come back with really good news. So, and we all know, we can all sit up here and explain to our residents that yeah, we are raising the tax rate 2.1 cents, but, you know, we told you in 2019 when we out for those bonds, and we're really doing a great job of paying down our debt with minimal tax rate increases, I think. So thank you so much for that.
Can you clarify what the mayor was saying there? So had we, the debt increase due to floating more of the bonds would have been how many cents?
Back in 2019, it was 10 cents,
So-
or that it could have gone up from that time. It was
And it
about
was
10 cents.
About 10 cents. We had projected anywhere from 5 to 10 cents, depending on what we saw in annual growth in property values. I will say since the 2019 bond program, we went roughly from 3.2 in tax-backed debt to 6.1. So we've gone up $3 million in additional debt service, annualized debt service, but we've only increased the tax rate 2.1 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 7B, consider setting the public hearing regarding the City of Friendswood fiscal year 2023-24 municipal budget for August 28th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. in the council chamber, City Hall, 910 South Friendswood Drive, Friendswood, Texas, 77546. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion from Councilmember Hanks and a second from Councilmember Griffon, setting the budget hearing for August 28th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. in council chamber. Any questions or comments? All in favor? 7-0. Motion passes. Item 7C, received the 2023 appraisal rolls certified by the Galveston Central Appraisal District and the Harris County Appraisal District, the anticipated collection rate, and the excess debt collection certified by the city's tax collector, and the new revenue and voter-approved tax rates. I just make the statement that the appraisal rolls have been received.
Motion.
We don't need a motion.
You don't need a motion. Okay.
Just a point of fact there. Item 7D, consider approving the ad valorem tax rate for 2023, fiscal year October 1, 2023 to September 30th, 2024. I need a motion on this item. Councilmember
Motion.
Rocky.
Oh,
I move that the City of Friendswood propose a tax rate of 50.8360 cents per $100 valuation. This rate is effectively a 9.8% or 4.5 cent increase in the tax rate above the no new revenue rate of 46.3131. The proposed rate is 2.1 cents more than the city's current tax rate of 48.7314 cents.
I'll second the motion if it needs to be seconded.
Yes, I have a motion by Councilmember Rocky and a second by Councilmember Griffon to propose a tax rate of 50.836 cents per $100 valuation. Any more further questions or comments? All in favor? Motion passes. Item 7E, consider setting the public hearing regarding the ad valorem tax rate for 2023 on September 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the council chamber, City Hall, 910 South Friendswood Drive, Friendswood, Texas, 77546.
I
Councilmember
move to schedule.
Second.
I move to schedule a public hearing on the proposed tax rate on September 11, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the City Council chambers of City Hall to take comments from the public for or against the proposed tax rate.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Branson and a second by Councilmember Rocky setting a public hearing regarding the ad valorem tax rate for 2023 for September 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in City Council chambers. Any questions or comments on this one? All in favor? Motion passes. The vote to adopt the City of Friendswood tax rate for tax year 2023, I think that means 2024, will be held during the City Council meeting on September 11th, 2023. Item 8, Appendix C, zoning ordinance amendments regarding permitted use table amendments. I now call to order this public hearing regarding the proposed amendments to Appendix C, zoning ordinance, Section 7.P.6, permitted use table, including updates to categories because of changes to the North American Industry Classification System, NAICS reference book, changes in allowed uses in the commercial zoning districts, and to remove subnote B5S1 which was inadvertently left off changes made with ordinance 2022-01. Now I'd like to request that staff summarize the subject of this public hearing. Aubrey, you're standing right in front of me.
Yes.
I think you should tell us what's going on.
All right, I will. So these are changes to the permitted use table that the Planning and Zoning Commission has been working on over the past little bit. It started out with the ordinance subcommittee kind of worked through and then brought it back to the rest of the commission, which is how we've been handling changes like this. So it's a process that works well. So the proposed changes include the amendments to the NAICS code references. So a lot of those were changed this year for some reason. It's a federal entity that reviews all the industries. These industries are used by the census, by the comptroller. It's just a standardized method of classifying businesses. So it helps us to determine what zoning district the uses are allowed in. It allows us to, if we're not sure, we can cross-reference with, other sources of information. So it's helpful. They update that code book every 5 years. So this year, some of their changes include, like, just the retail category changed from stores to retailers in a lot of their categories. They'll do away with as businesses either evolve or go away. They change the categories to reflect just the current times. So, for instance, 442 is no longer a valid code. It changed to 4491. And like 518, the definition changed from data processing, hosting, and related services to computing infrastructure providers, data processing, web hosting, and related services. So it's a bunch of little detail, but we are up to date with these changes. We also added cumulative zoning, so that if a use is allowed in commercial or community shopping center, we also added it to be allowed, or community shopping center and downtown, it's also allowed in industrial and light industrial. So we did not remove any uses. We're actually adding quite a few. And then adding the allowance of breweries and wineries in the downtown district and community shopping center. And those will remain office use only in, let's see, hang on. Let's see. Community shopping center remain office use only in commercial and specific use permit and industrial areas. So this was an item that was on P&Z's to-do list from last year. We separated that out from tobacco manufacturing. So tobacco stays the same, but we're gonna allow breweries and wineries. That is still separate from TABC's requirements, the limited alcohol area. All those requirements would still be in place. It's just our use category, we would allow those businesses. And as stated, that the S1 footnotes were removed. It's just cleanup from a previous approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission held their public hearing on July 13th and approved the recommendation, or approved the changes in a 5-0 vote.
Tom Hinckley wasn't there.
No.
Who ran the meeting if you weren't there?
Commissioner Saxon.
Uh-oh. Suspect. Very suspect.
We want to recount.
Yeah, exactly, okay. All right. So if anyone had wanted to speak, they would have signed up. There being no one desiring to speak on this item, I now close this public hearing, and we now move on to item 8B. To consider an ordinance approving amendments to Appendix C zoning ordinance sections 7.p.6 of the permitted use table as previously noted. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second. Whoever. It was either me or Joe.
Matrangan, Branson, okay. You broke the tie there, thank you. Anybody have any more questions about this? All in favor? 7-0, motion passes. All right, down to the much anticipated city manager's report presented by city manager Murad Kabiri.
Yes, sir, Mayor and Council. I have a number of items to report tonight. Two, as it pertains to our stellar EMS. The first item, they were recognized once again. I believe this was the 7th year in a row for the Mission Lifeline EMS Award. This pertains, this is a recognition by the American Heart Association recognizing our STEM-E capable EMS services and the efforts that they go through to make sure that they're able to respond and take care of our citizens and others in Friendswood with it related to heart attacks and strokes and things like that. Going next slide.
Congratulations, but Lisa, Roy, Brittany.
Murat, isn't
Greg
gold,
Otto.
gold
sorry.
the highest award
Brittany,
that
the
they
guy
offer?
sitting next to you.
Yes, gold is the highest, and much like ASO, when they stop getting these awards is when I start getting concerned. But I have no doubt that they will continue to get these high recognitions.
Very well deserved. Yes, great job.
Mayor Pro Tem Rocky had already mentioned it tonight, but I'll just reiterate, gala tickets are available for our library. If you haven't gotten yours, I would encourage you to do so. It's a fun time had by all, and it's a great cause, raising funds for our amazing library. The next item, I want to recognize Ivan Ortega, our project manager in the engineering department. He was recently received his American Public Works Association certification in capital project inspections, basically standards and guidelines associated with a number of different federal and state rules relating to infrastructure projects. These are OSHA guidelines, these are Code of Federal Regulations and things like that. It required 120 hours and over 8 months of training, so we congratulate Ivan for this recent recognition. Also want to, in the vein of recognizing folks, is Ivan here, by the way? He is not. He has a sick child. Okay, well, that's more important right now. Also want to recognize our very own Letty Brish. She was selected as one of 20 applicants across the state of Texas to participate in the Texas Women's Leadership Institute program, training to become a city manager. I told you when we hired her, she's got the pedigree to replace me, and we're encouraged and excited about her growth potential and her willingness to take this opportunity. She did get a scholarship for this program, and so we thank her for her fiscal stewardship.
Great job, Letty.
Way to go, Letty.
This is something I'm extremely excited about. Lisa Camp, stalwart in our community and has been for a number of years. Our current Friendswood Volunteer Fire Department EMS chief will become our EMS chief, our first ever for the city of Friendswood. She will start with us on November 1st. We could not have picked a better person to lead this new department, and we're thrilled to death that she's joining Friendswood. So please take a moment to congratulate her.
Good job. Hey. Was that your rookie card? Last week?
Oh, don't listen to the mayor. I told Joe that you graduated with me, and she goes, well, she sure aged way better than you have. I said, I know.
The surprising part of that statement was that he graduated.
Yeah, we heard some stories earlier.
That was a wonder you did, really.
Last but not least, our police department is recognized once again, this time by SafeWise for one of the safest cities in the state of Texas. They have moved up 4 spots in the state of Texas from number 19 to number 15. As it pertains to the Houston metro area, we're still number 1 by nearly half if you compare our crime statistics with that of our neighbors. So thank you, FPD, for the work that you do day in and day out. And that's it for the city manager's report.
Great news.
Great job. Yes.
Love that one.
All right, we'll now recess the August 7th City Council meeting and call to order the Friendswood Employee Benefit Trust regular meeting. I need a motion to approve consent agenda items 2A and 2B.
Motion to approve.
Motion and second. Councilmember Branson, Councilmember Aaronworth. Let's see. All in favor? Motion passes. Okay, with no further business, we now adjourn the Friendswood Employee Benefit Trust regular meeting, and we're going to take a quick break before we reconvene the council meeting. So, are you ready for that, Sally? You're looking very surprised.
Need a break?
You didn't need a break? Well,
I never turned down a break.
some of us have been here like an hour. All right, I now reconvene the City Council regular meeting and move on to item 12A, business items Consider authorizing the monthly transfer of funds to the City of Friendswood Employee Benefit Trust contingent upon sufficient appropriations in the fiscal year 23-24 City of Friendswood budget. I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Sally Branson, Brent Aaronworth. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Just real quick before we move on to the next item, I do want to thank Higginbotham for the great work they did representing Friendswood today. This year, they were exceptional in getting us some great rates with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, great.
Thanks, Harry. Appreciate it.
And the young lady next to him, Shanna, is the one that drove
Shanna,
that boat.
thanks for doing all Harry's work. Appreciate it. Now you guys can go to dinner or whatever. You don't have to stick around for the rest of this stuff. All right. Consider authorizing an agreement for public improvement district and tax increment reinvestment zone creation and administrative services with P3 Works LLC. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
So
Councilmember
just
Branson, Councilmember Aaronworth. Discussion, comments?
or go ahead and
Councilmember Rocky.
Mayor Pro Tem Rocky.
Mayor
I'd
Pro
like
Tem.
a little more explanation of this item.
Sure.
To understand how it all works.
So what you're doing this evening is simply approving a consultant contract with P3 to represent the city. You may recall over this past year and a half, we've been in communication with a couple of developers that are interested in creating a tax increment reinvestment zone and a public improvement district to finance some regional infrastructure projects. You have indicated over the course of this past year and a half interest in getting some additional information and further evaluating an opportunity to create those districts in hopes of getting projects completed in the city. P3 and ultimately Bracewell are going to be consultants that represent the city of Friendswood and our interest in when we negotiate any potential creation of these districts. Awarding a consultant contract this evening does not create the district, nor does your next meeting when you establish a PID policy, basically establishing the priorities in accordance with state law that are the desires of this city council of what they would like to achieve with these PIDs and potentially with the TERS. Ultimately, the cost of these services will be borne by the PID district and or the application fee to create a PID. So this is at no cost to the city of Friendswood.
Good news, Councilmember Rocky.
So
Mayor Pro Tem Rocky, sorry.
Councilman's fine. When they come back and tell us what we can and can't do, well, they will explain what rights we can do or what we can oppose on these land developers in terms of in order to be able to get these, the PID or the TERS, whatever they want. We would have that ability, right?
Correct. And you will discuss this in further detail at your next city council meeting on the 28th. We have an item tentatively scheduled for that.
I really like the idea of having some parameters and some information so that we're not having to just look at it with individual applicants, but we have some good understanding of what we want and don't want before we get into people coming before us and asking.
Correct.
So I like that. Thank you.
And P3 is a subject matter expert. They've done hundreds of these. They definitely have the ability and the historical expertise to represent us.
Thanks for being here, Andrea.
This isn't engaging for dollars right now, though. Is this engagement for?
So this is a contract that they will represent us, but we haven't incurred any cost. And before we incur any costs, we will set up parameters for which that we can identify a recapture of those costs.
Okay.
So what's driving the timing of this? Why now?
So we have been working with a particular developer on the Whitcomb property for well over a year now. Council has had multiple meetings with this developer on the creation of a tax increment reinvestment zone in a public improvement district for the Whitcomb tract. Their timeline based upon their infrastructure needs and when they plan on moving dirt predicates the need to get the consultant on board now.
Okay, thank you.
Glad we pulled this out of the consent agenda, because we wouldn't have had all this good discussion. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? 6-1. All right, item C, consider approving the formation of an ad hoc committee related to citywide parking issues. Do I have a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
I'm happy to update. So since the days of when I was on P&Z, which are old and yellow by now, we've always had some issues with parking, specifically in the downtown area, because some of our properties that we'd like to have developed are the size of a postage stamp, and by the time you add the parking in, it really makes it very difficult financially to have a go on the project. So FDEDC has been going to dust off their plans that Landgraf and Associates created that talked about walkability. And so it kind of clicked, there were several of us talking, that maybe there was some synergy that we could acquire by if we take a look at maybe ways to encourage walkability within our downtown, we might be able to reevaluate the parking that's required in our downtown area. So this ad hoc committee has representatives from FDEDC, P&Z, CEDC, and then developers. And we're going into it with thinking outside the box. Come back to us with some ideas, some suggestions, maybe things that we have not considered in the future. They may not come back with anything that we haven't already thought of, but we felt like it was an opportunity to allow some folks from different entities and already on our boards and or commissions that could come together and think tank this. So this is really an opportunity to think tank the problem. And it's an ongoing problem for many years. Aubrey will shake her head on that one, I'm sure, because she and I drove around town many times looking for parking for people who wanted to develop in downtown, and there was none.
So, just so I understand, so you're thinking, sorry, well, I already started.
Councilmember Matranga.
Sorry. So what you're thinking is, in your driver, in explaining this, is that there are a number of sites that just wouldn't, that could support a business, but not support a business with parking around town. And that this would be looking at ways that they could overcome that limitation. To allow that property to be developed in downtown.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And it wouldn't be just specific, we're not going to limit them to downtown, but that's kind of what created the problem.
I see.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Rocky.
Has the committee been selected?
Yes,
Do we know who they are?
yes. Would you like their names?
Yes.
One of them is sitting right here, Mr. Tom Hinckley. So we have the chair of P&Z, Tom, and then Marcus Rives. We have the chair of FDEC, Rebecca Hillenberg, and Ron Cox. We have the chair of CEDC, Susan Hazamaikas, and our developer is Brett Banfield. And then myself, I'm going to be tied into it.
So the reason the names were not listed in the backup material are mentioned is simply because individual council members can't create an ad hoc committee. The mayor can. But if council collectively approves this action, in essence, the mayor is going to work with naming the members that Councilmember Branson just mentioned.
I was just curious who they were going to be, and it sounds like a great committee.
Yeah. So Sally's talking like it's a done deal. It's not a done deal until I call for the vote. And then hopefully it's a done deal. So any other discussion?
Well, I just want to mention that Anson Jones Masonic Lodge in the downtown has entered into interlocal agreements with the old police station when they were there, and I know Kimberly from Parks and Rec calls when they need overflow parking. We're always amenable to that, and I want to mention too that we're having a golf tournament in which we're going to try to raise funds, and we're going to pave that parking lot and get a walkway over there as soon as I can possibly get that done. But we're amenable to overflow parking at Anson Jones.
That's exactly the kind of thing.
I like how you fit that into the whole.
We got a big fundraising golf tournament coming up. Please go to our website and sign up.
What do you think, Karen? Sorta? Skirting the edge of the lines there, but he worked that golf tournament in there, so. Yeah, well, hey, I want to help you out, so.
So if I had one more question.
All right,
and
this is
that-
your second time speaking on the topic, so,
Yeah.
go ahead. You get to speak twice. Number 2, I'm keeping track.
I know.
Rocky spoke twice. too.
So my question is this: I'm just curious as to what the thinking is of why we have, a lot of different organizations and boards that already exist within Friendswood. Why do we need a special one? Could this work be done out of one of the existing boards or commissions? I'm just curious. I know you have a reason. I'm just curious.
This is just an ad hoc. This is going to be a very time-limited engagement. This is not to be set up forever and ever, oh man. This is
Sure.
just to work this particular issue, and then it'll go away.
Because it touches a bunch of different boards and commissions, and I think they all have little bits of expertise in the area. I think it's a great idea to sort of team up and for this one topic. And
Okay. That's what I assumed. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to assume. I wanted to.
Yeah, no, it's a
hear. Thank
limited
you.
engagement.
Got it.
okay. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? 7-0.
Okay, Tom. We're on it.
Okay, item 13, proposed resolutions and ordinances. Consider a resolution approving an update to the City of Friendswood personnel policy. I'll make the motion on this one.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Any discussion? Haley is right there.
And if you would like Haley or I to give you a brief background, I can do it real quick. The city's current personnel policy has been in place since 1996. The city charter stipulates that the city manager present council with the personnel policy for adoption, and y'all have, and you've done updates over the years, but they've been very limited. As you can imagine, a lot has changed in the 27 years since that policy was written, both at the federal level as well as the state level. So we're bringing a new personnel policy to council to bring us up to date with federal laws with respect to medical issues such as, and I noted it on the slide, we noted it, the lactation room for employees, the mental leave for police officers and dispatchers, adjusting our holidays to reflect what federal law has in place for holidays, and then relegating certain items to the city manager for operational efficiencies. For instance, things such as dress code or things like that that are germane to the city manager's office.
Great. Any questions? Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you, Haley.
Great presentation.
Good work. And I want to mention that Haley and Karen Horner worked a lot of hours on this.
They did all the work.
They did all the work, and it took them a long time. Okay, item B, consider a resolution approving the City of Friendswood's public funds management and investment policy. I have a motion on this item.
I'll make the motion.
Councilmember Rocky, Councilmember Aaronworth. Discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, consider resolution authorizing an advance funding agreement for bridge replacement or rehabilitation with the Texas Department of Transportation for the bridge at Dunbar Estates Drive at Mary's Creek.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Anybody have questions for Hill?
How long was this on TxDOT's radar?
So since I've been city engineer every 2 years, so for at least last 16 years.
16 years, and we're finally getting that bridge replaced.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, it finally reached the point to where it was functionally called not obsolete, but it is deficient, structurally deficient. So it's not in any danger of falling down tomorrow, but it is to a point to where it's weaker than what it should be, and it's time to get it replaced.
And completion deadline said 2025?
So they're going to put it in the fiscal year that for 27 for construction in 27.
27. Okay.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah. So you're looking at another
4 years.
It'll be good that long?
3 years, 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
It'll go that long, but
So it's load limited. It's not, as you said, it's not falling down, but it is.
It's not
load-
falling down, but,
it is load limited.
yeah, it is limited in its shelf life now.
And it's as I understood, it was a number one on their list for Friendswood.
Correct. And
That's correct. Yes.
so every 2 years, the Texas Department of Transportation evaluates all of our bridges, and a bridge is basically defined of any span greater than 20 feet or greater across a body of water, across another roadway, what have you. This particular bridge was noted several times over the last 16 years that I mentioned. Each year, they give us a list of things to fix and conditions to place on it, and the city of Friendswood does make those repairs and place those limits. It just, at this point, it's better to replace it altogether than it is to continue to make repairs to the bridge.
All right. All in favor? Thank you, Hill. Consider on first reading an ordinance repealing Chapter 54 Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 2, Curfew for Minors of the Friendswood City Code to comply with House Bill 1819, which repealed the authority of political subdivisions to adopt or enforce juvenile curfews. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Mayor Pro Tem Rocky.
I just want to make I understand why we're doing this because the state law has changed, but this is taking a tool out of our police department's bag that's very useful and that they've used over the years, and has probably prevented a number of crimes from occurring. And I think our state legislature was not intelligent in passing this. My opinion.
Agreed.
And I know we need
Councilmember
to
Hand.
pass it, but I'm going to vote against it because I just feel so strongly that it's a safety issue for our young people. And so I'm going to vote against it. And I know we have to, just on principle, just like.
Can,
All right.
can I ask a question? What happens if we didn't pass it?
State
have a-
law
we have a law
preempts
that-
the city's ability to, even if it were left on the books, we would not be able to enforce it. But I will say, for the sake of our police officers enforcing the law, it would be better that it's removed from our books so that there is no confusion.
Well, if Trish isn't voting for it, I'm not voting for it.
No.
Here's your problem, chief, right here.
Can I encourage y'all to vote in favor of this, but tell the state how awful they were in this regard?
All right, I'll do it.
Thank
We
you.
have. All right.
I don't want to.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Reluctantly.
Okay, well then I can vote against it.
Opposed?
Now, Karen, can she do that?
She just did.
All right. Motion passes. Consider an ordinance amending the city's general budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 by approving Budget Amendment 10 and providing for supplemental appropriation and/or transfer of certain funds. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Branson, Councilmember Matranga. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Item 14, consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda items 14A through 14F.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? No opposed. Okay. Item 15, executive session. We now recess into and conduct an executive session pursuant to section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code to seek the advice of the city's attorney regarding pending and contemplated litigation involving the city of Friendswood. I now reconvene the open meeting of the Friendswood City Council and announce, in accordance with section 551.102 of the Texas Government Code, no action was taken in executive session. We now move on to item 15A, but I want to recognize Murad Kabiri, City Manager Murad Kabiri.
Yes. Last month, you all approved or you concurred with the selection of a new IT director. Mr. Terry Prindle out of Wisconsin is here this evening. His first council meeting here this evening, and we're thrilled to have him with us.
Were you impressed?
Yes.
Right.
Cheese curds.
Yeah, he had the right haircut for the job. We're excited that he's on board.
All right.
Welcome.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?